Nebraska ball is back after a decade of missing the tournament. They were back dancing with Casey Tominaga leading the way. Run into a Texas A&M team that was playing really good basketball and losing the first round, but finishing, the top of the Big Ten. Still a very impressive season. And, you lose a lot of guys, but, you bring back two key starters and bring in some interesting pieces. So Christian here with Nick and Steve Marik of Nebraska Rivals. And Steve, can you tell us about, how's Nebraska basketball? It's such I'm just going to say Nebraska ball. How is Nebraska ball feeling after, making the tournament, and can that momentum continue this season?
Yeah, and that's totally all right. Everybody around here calls it Nebraska ball too. It's kind of like a cool little name we have for it. But, for the first time in a long time, after what Fred Hoiberg was able to accomplish with that team, with that specific team, which wasn't perfect, but it still had some guys to do some things, and making the tournament for the first time since 2014, the excitement around the men's basketball program is high right now. It's very high. And that's saying something with, right now with what the football program is doing too. So those two programs are kind of competing right now, but, more the merrier for the fans around here. It was really fun to watch kind of play out last year, because the excitement just wasn't what it was last year for a very long time. In Fred's first first four seasons, there were some real low moments, but, he changed things up. He adjusted his coaching style a bit. He got he got some players to do some really good things. And yeah, they made the tournament for the first time in a really long time, and they made some noise in the Big Ten Conference tournament too, which again, in Fred's first four seasons wasn't really a thing. So yeah, I mean, you mentioned the guys leaving from last year's team. Considering who they are and what they did, I don't think that's a big deal. I think a bigger deal is who Fred brought in, and the quality of transfer that he brought in. And if those guys can play up to their potential, this is a NCAA tournament team again, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think Rolly Royster from Utah, I mean, he's one of the most underrated players nationally. Granted, he did get hurt in the last season, so, he wasn't playing. But when he did play, you could just tell he was in complete control of the whole game. He averaged 10, 5, and 5. He is a floor elevator right off the bat. Even though he's a newcomer, he's a veteran, top 100 assist rate. So besides Rolly, who do you think is going to be just a really solid contributor and playmaker for Nebraska this year?
Yeah, Nick, that's a really great pick right there. Rolly Worster, what he is going to bring to the team is exactly what Nebraska did not have last year. And that's a true ball handler, a true kind of point guard. But again, like, we know what he can do offensively. He hasn't shot the three ball well previously in his career, but Fred seems to do well with guys like that and kind of tweaking things with their shot to get the best out of that. But what Worster really brings that Nebraska didn't have last year was that true ball handler, but also what he brings intensity wise on the defensive side of the court, I think is really going to play a factor with Nebraska. And, I think he's going to be a fan favorite. He's a Montana guy, but he kind of grew up a Husker fan. He's got some connections to the state with his family. So that's kind of like a cool twist to it too. But yeah, him and Aaron Eulis should be the 1-2 punch at point guard. And Aaron Eulis was suspended by the NCAA for the gambling stuff. He's a transfer from Iowa, so he wasn't able to play last year, but he is eligible this year. So Nebraska, after basically not playing with a true point guard last year, is going to have two at the helm this season. So that's going to be different. But yeah, if I had to pick somebody else, Berke Buktinchel, the transfer from UCLA, he played for the Turkish national team this summer and did some really good things. He did not have a great first season at UCLA, but again, these are the type of guys that Fred kind of looks for in the transfer portal. These big kind of 6'9", 6'10" guys with skill, I think fits Fred Hoiberg's offensive system really well. He did really good things with Rink Mast, transfer from Bradley, who's another 6'10" guy who can shoot the ball from three. He's got a little passing skill to him. And I think Berke Buktinchel is kind of just another form of that, who's looking for a fresh start after things didn't really go well his first season at UCLA. So if I had to pick another one, maybe Berke Buchnichel. He got here a little late, obviously, because of a overseas tournament basketball that he was playing. But, adding him to the mix, to the core guys, returning of Bryce Williams and Juwan Gary, I think Berke might be a good pick for somebody who's going to just be injected into the program and do well right away.
Interesting. He's definitely a sleeper. I don't really remember him from UCLA this year.
Yeah, he battled some injuries, but again, he flashed some skills. But I think just his first season of American basketball didn't go as planned. But you can see, just watch him. He's got skills. He's got talent. He can move for somebody who's his size at 6'10", and around 250, 240 pounds. He can shoot a little bit of the three. He just fits Fred Hoiberg, and I think Fred, like I said earlier, looks for guys like that who flashes skills that he looks for, but maybe is just looking for a fresh start, and that's really what Berke is.
That's awesome. So
I got another one for you if you want. There's a lot of them. Yeah, they brought in 7 new guys from the transfer portal. One of which is an interesting player who's not even on scholarship, but his name is Justin Bullis. He's a local guy from Nebraska, but I'm not going to pick him. Connor Essegian, yeah, JUCO guy from Southeast Community College. Connor Essegian is the other kind of popular name around here, just because of what he did 2 seasons ago as a true freshman at Wisconsin. Obviously, with Keisei Tominaga moving on, you're going to wonder where the 3-point shooting is going to come from. That's why Connor Essegian was brought to Lincoln, is to be that 3-point specialist, that guy who can stretch defenses and we just create room for others inside of the arc. So Connor Essegian is another one that I think Fred Hoiberg saw what he can do, especially from playing against him the past few seasons, and kind of he's another one that really fits Fred Hoiberg's space and pace, kind of read and react offense.
No, totally. I was super impressed by, a lot of people were, by Essegian's freshman year, and he was one of the biggest what the hell is going on things last year for me. And I know Wisconsin had a lot of guys, but I think he's a guy that can come in here and take it to a whole nother level and really, really make that jump. And that's the beauty of the transfer portal, is seeing guys make that jump. But just quickly, just looking at this starting 5, it's not that flashy. And I guess because Nebraska's just hasn't been viewed as a basketball team, a pro basketball program with, that could be stringing together multiple NCAA tournament periods in a row, that they're going very much so under the radar. But this team is old and big. Juwan Gary is one of the best defenders in the Big Ten, right? He is a tough dude. He's a leader. Braxton is it Mia? Is that what I said?
Yeah, Braxton Mia is another one that's really kind of interesting. Fred Hoiberg has not really ever had somebody like Braxton Mia. He's 7'1". He's a legit 7-footer. He's 250 pounds. Fred Hoiberg at Nebraska has never really had a true rim protector, kind of rim runner type guy, a lob threat that Braxton Mia is going to be. So he's battled kind of a hand injury. I think he battled a hand injury last year at Washington, and that kind of limited his what he could have done on the field for the Huskies. But that's behind him right now, from what we're told. And you just think about how Braxton Mia fits, in Fred Hoiberg's offense. And again, like I said, Fred just hasn't really had a body like that who can do the things that a 7'1", 250-pounder can do, whether that's being a lob threat, protecting the rim defensively. He's just going to change things defensively for Nebraska that, didn't exist last year on the court.
And another guy I just want to give the flowers to is Bryce Williams. Bryce Williams, 23 points in 2 Big Ten tournament games, 24, and I understand was a blowout in the NCAA tournament. This is his 5th year, and there's just something that I'm just digging, just how under the radar, and just Rolly being injured and playing on the West Coast. Not many people know about him, but Nick talked about, that is as pure of a floor general, do it all, kind of raise your floor of your team as you're going to get from him. And then you have Gavin Griffiths, who
that's another one.
Rutgers, but he can really shoot it. He was a good recruit. So there's a lot of bodies that Hoiberg's got to work with here. And I like his son too. His son's a good little role player off the bench.
Sam can play some basketball. He wasn't blessed with the Division I sides that his other teammates were, but he does have the work ethic. He busts his butt He's really kind of valuable on defense. He knows how to play passing lanes. He knows how to rack up steals, and he's made some really big steals and, kind of coast to coast layups in his career that in big moments in games. So yeah, Sam Hoiberg is always going to be the one coming off the bench if you need some defensive energy. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Christian, about Bryce Williams, 6'7", over 200 pounds, 215, 220 pounds. He looks like an NBA player. And last year he was put in a position that I don't think really, and I'm not breaking any news here, but like even Fred Hoiberg told us that they just needed a ball handler. And Bryce Williams was the best option at that time. But right now, with Aaron Ulis being eligible, with Raleigh Worcester now on the roster, Bryce Williams can play his natural 2 and even some 3 in some lineups. So, he averaged 13 points, almost 6 rebounds. He was dishing out about 3 assists last year too. And what everybody really likes is the 3-point shooting. He's pretty efficient, almost 39% for a 6'7" guard. Like I said, he looks like an NBA guy. And with the new additions to the roster, I think he can kind of play his more natural 2 and 3, and that's going to be it's going to be really interesting because this team now has several options that it can go to, and it wasn't like that last year.
Yeah, that's what I love Nebraska basketball this year because of just the pure grittiness. Like you said, Juwan Gary, Bryce Williams, Rolly, all older veteran type players. Then you have some explosive guys coming in like Essagian. Griffs is low key, flying under the radar for Rutgers. And a guy we haven't even talked about. It's just goes in on the depth that Nebraska has is Andrew Morgan from North Dakota State. I think he can be another really fun guy that is on my radar. Like Mass wasn't really on a lot of people's radar because he was coming from Bradley, but I think Andrew Morgan can be a really key contributor off this bench and play a vital role in how far this Nebraska team goes in March.
And he'll need to with Rick Mass not having surgery on his knee and out for the season. So that's why they went out and got Andrew Morgan. And I called him up after he committed, and he told me the story about how that went down. And Fred Hoiberg was Andrew Morgan's first visitor when he entered his name in the portal. It came down to Nebraska and Minnesota, and Andrew Morgan is from small town farmland Minnesota. So that was a really cool recruiting job from Fred Hoiberg. And again, Andrew Morgan, he's 6'10", 250, 245. He's basically the same size as Rink Mask. But the difference is Andrew Morgan is more athletic. He's more of a high riser than Rink Mask. Rink Mask is good at what he does. And that's like a pick and pop threat as a big. And he does those things well. He can pass out of the post. He does those things well. But Andrew Morgan has more oomph to him. I don't know how to say it. He can jump. He can two-hand jam. He's a physical guy down there. Like I said, the farming aspect, he knows what hard work is. He grew up on a farm. He's not afraid to get a little dirty and do the things that other players don't like to do. So he's going to add a little different dimension too. It's something with him where, I think a lot of the basketball fans around here are kind of wondering about Andrew Morgan just because, you're coming from the Summit League, North Dakota State. You haven't played Big Ten Conference basketball before, but it was the same thing with Mast. He didn't have a ton of experience playing against power conference teams and defenses, but I don't know. There's something about Andrew Morgan that he moves really well. He's shown not as much as Rink to be a 3-point floor spacer as a big, but he's shown a little bit of it. So, and again, he's another guy that Fred Hoiberg has said that they're working on his shot, tweaking little aspects of his shot to be more efficient. So Andrew Morgan is definitely under the radar pick because he's going to play a lot with Rink out.
Yeah, this is a deep team, right? This team could go deep. Also, really stupid factoid that I just realized is that Rolly, Griffiths, and Essagian all transferred from red and white schools to another red and white school. So
yeah, I didn't know. I didn't put those two together. That's interesting. Yeah,
but no, this is as I've said, it just feels like an under the radar team because it just doesn't have that, whether it's Nebraska or just some of these names, it just might not have this like kind of sex appeal of just like other programs or just players that are just more noisy. Like Nebraska was, considering how good they were on both ends, right?
Yep.
Last year, just feel like they didn't get talked about that much or being taken that seriously. And, when, a team makes the NCAA tournament when it hasn't been there in a while and they get blown out in the first round, people are like, obviously I'm not picking Nebraska in my bracket, or like, they won't be back next year. But like, this team will be back there next year and they could be better. So I'd like to predict Nebraska to finish around, top 7, top 8 with potential to be top 5 in the Big Ten. I think they go to the NCAA tournament. I think they can win a game. I just think this is a team that's built to be consistent. And, if a guy like a Sejin, takes a really big step as a shooter and you have that firepower to go along with the veterans in the defense, that, this can be a really good team. So that's what
Sejin is a big one because last year did not go well for him. Obviously, there was a back injury early in the season that kind of limited him. But yeah, Fred seems very confident in his ability and his staff's ability to get the most out of the players that they brought in. And that's coaching. And, Fred, a lot of the guys that they brought in, when I talked to them why they chose Nebraska out of the portal, a lot of it had to do with Fred's offense and Fred's past, with him being a three-point shooter in the NBA, him being an NBA GM. He knows what professional basketball players look like. And so that just other kids want to gravitate towards that and play for somebody like him. So, and another thing, when you mentioned the depth of the team, it's also something where, you look at the roster, you look up and down at it, they can go small. They can go with a small lineup if the opponent adjusts for that, but they can also get super big too. And so there's a lot of different options for Fred Hoiberg and his staff this year. With what Braxton Mia brings, Andrew Morgan 6'10", Bear K is 6'10". So it's going to be really fun to watch play out.
Yep. Trust in Hoiberg, man. I mean, he's gone from 7-25 year 1 to 16-16 year 4, and then last season 23-11. I mean, he's improved the record every single year. Just made the tournament last season. So the next step is definitely winning a game this season, and I think Nebraska does just that. Yep.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's funny when everybody is singing Fred's praises, but maybe like 2 seasons ago I was getting drafts already of Fred Hoiberg fired, because
it's funny how it can change so quick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just absolutely insane how he has turned this thing around, and credit to him because he adjusted early in his tenure at Nebraska. I don't think he really adjusted much. But 2 seasons ago, he brought in a transfer portal class that included guys like Sam Griesel from North Dakota State. He was a local guy from Nebraska, so he came home to play for the hometown Huskers. Emmanuel, I'm forgetting his name. Transferred from SMU. He was a really good culture guy. Both those guys were really good culture guys, and I think it kind of set the foundation for what we're currently seeing right now. Last year, them making the tournament, doing well in the Big Ten conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. So, I think it all kind of started two seasons ago, where Fred kind of adjusted and brought in guys who are willing to dive on the court, get scrappy, do the little things. And before, I don't think it was really like that. It was more kind of a flash and dash offensive system. But now, if you want to play for Fred Hoiberg, you must play defense as well, on top of being a good shooter, basically. So, a lot of momentum right now in basketball land at Nebraska.
Awesome stuff, man. Steve, very fun talking Nebraska ball with you. Appreciate all of your insight, and thanks for joining the show.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Nick.
Yep, thank you.